Veterans Day is an official United States holiday honoring armed service veterans. It is a federal holiday that is observed on November the 11th. It coincides with other holidays such as the Armistice Day or Remembrance Day, which are celebrated in other parts of the world, and also mark the anniversary of the signing of the armistice that ended World War I. Major hostilities of World War I were formally ended at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918 with the German signing of the armistice. Veterans Day is not to be confused with the Memorial Day. Veterans Day celebrates the service of all U.S. military veterans, while the Memorial Day is a day of remembering the men and women who died while serving. A veteran, and I wanted to find who is a veteran. It comes from the Latin meaning old, is a person who has had long service or experience in a particular occupation or field. A veteran of. This page, this where I got this, refers to military veterans, a person who has served or is serving in the armed forces and has direct exposure to active military conflict, commonly known as war veterans, although not all military conflict or areas in which armed combat takes place are necessarily referred to as a war. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson first proclaimed Armistice Day in November 11, 1919. In proclaiming the holiday, he said, "To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service, and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of the nations." The United States Congress passed a concurrent resolution 7 years later, in June 4th, 1926, requesting that President Calvin Coolidge issue another proclamation to observe November 11th with appropriate ceremonies. Congregational Act 52, 351, 5 U.S. Code, Section 87A, just in case you wanted to know. Approved May 13, 1938, made the 11th of November in each year a legal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Well, in 1945, U.S. World War veteran Raymond Weeks from Birmingham, Alabama, had the idea to expand Armistice Day to celebrate all black veterans, not just those who died in World War I. Weeks led a delegation to General Decatur, who supported the idea of National Veterans Day. Weeks led the first national ceremony celebration in 1947 in Alabama and annually until his death in 1985. President Reagan honored Weeks at the White House with a Presidential Citizenship Merit in 1982 as the driving force for a national holiday. Elizabeth Dole from Kansas, who prepared the briefing for President Reagan, determined Weeks as the father of Veterans Day. U.S. Representative Ed Reese from Emporia, Kansas, presented a bill establishing the holiday through Congress. President Dwight Eisenhower, also from Kansas, signed the bill into law on May 26, 1954. You know, I never knew any of this before I read it. Congress amended this act on June 1st, 1954, replacing amnesty with veterans, and it has been known as Veterans Day since. Congress, the National Veterans Award, created in 1954, also started in Birmingham. Congress Reese of Kansas was honored in Alabama as the first recipient of the reward for his support offering legislation to make Veterans Day a federal holiday, which marked 9 years of effort by Raymond Weeks. Weeks conceived the idea in 1945, petitioned General Eisenhower in 1946, and led the first Veterans Day ceremony in 1947, keeping the official name Armistice Day until Veterans Day was legal in 1954. Although originally scheduled for celebration on November the 11th of every year starting in 1971, according to the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, Veterans Day was moved to the fourth Monday of October, and in 1978 it was moved back to its original celebration on November the 11th. I've never read that in any service I've ever been in until today. And I apologize for not doing it later. So what I did was, I said, well, how many wars have we been in? 26 pages later, the list of wars that America has been involved in has been amazing. Our conflicts. The American Revolution, I'm not going to go over them, by the way. The American Revolution War in 1775. We've talked about the War of 1812. We talked about the Mexican-American Wars, the Civil War, and then the major ones, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the Afghanistan War, and the Iraq War. So we've been in a few wars. We're destined to have wars, and I'll talk about that in a few moments. I read another statistics, the passing of the greatest generation. World War II veteran statistics. Every 90 seconds, a memory of World War II, its sight and sound, its terror and triumph disappears. Yielding to the inalterable process of aging, the men and women who fought and won the great conflict are now in their 80s and 90s. They are dying quickly at a rate of 680 a day, according to the recent U.S. Veteran Administration figures. Honoring the 21st century veterans sacrificed before they passed from the scene is at the forefront of everything we do on this website to the National World War Museum. And so it talked about that. There's no time to lose, said Dr. Gordon H. Nick Muller, President and CEO of the museum. And so it's interesting to read that. Those who have served, and I was curious as to how many have served. 22,658,000 veterans in America today. 22,658,000 veterans in America today. 1.9 million living veterans of World War II, of which the new statistic is 900 are dying every day. Military veterans often receive and should receive special treatment in their respective countries due to the sacrifice they've made during wars. And shall I say, not only in America, every war that's ever been fought in all the world, whether it's under the dictatorship of Hitler or whoever, those men served under the command of their leader. They went to war maybe because they didn't want to, but they were commanded and they had allegiance to their commander-in-chief, and they did that. Today I want to, in reference to the wonderful work that our men have done, what does it take to be a veteran of the faith of Christ. What it takes to be a veteran of the faith in Christ, and I did give you an outline. When Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, from 1953 to 1961, he received a letter from an 8-year-old Keith Atkins of Turnbull, Connecticut. This 8-year-old boy wrote, after listening to the news about the Cold War, I am worried about people in the world. In thinking it over, I have a plan. Get all of the leaders together who want war, put them in a ring and let them fight it out. I'm sure many veterans of foreign wars feel this way about war. Just let those who want to fight do the fighting. Don't involve everybody else in it. War is a terrible thing. And yet it seems that war is inevitably in our world. And I don't think there's ever been a year somewhere in the world there's not been fighting over something. In Matthew chapter 24 and verse 6 it says this. Matthew 24 verse 6 says this. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Some reason, somehow, God knew with the chaos in America, and because of Satan's, there's always going to be wars until the end. Most Bible commentators believe, however, that Jesus was talking about the coming destruction of Jerusalem, which took place in 70 A.D. But could it be that wars are also a sign of the second coming of Christ? Many believe so. Wars do seem inevitably, and we have not seen the last, and we are still in war somewhere in the world today. General Sherman once said, you don't know the horror aspect of war. I've been through 2 wars and I know. I've seen cities and homes in ashes. I've seen thousands of men lying on the ground, their dead faces looking up into the skies. I tell you, war is hell.
Right.
I don't question Sherman's feelings and convictions about war. If you've never been there, you just don't know. However, I have heard it put this way. War is hellish, but not hell. Based on scriptures, I would say this is true. Nothing is as horrible as hell. World War II qualifies it as perhaps the greatest war or the most hellish war in history. In all 61 countries with 1.7 billion people, 3/4 of the world's population took part.